Well, guys, with 2017 rapidly approaching its endpoint, it is now time for us to start to reflect on some of the films that have come out this year. And 2017, for the most part, has been a really strong year for films. There's been a lot of films that has very much surprised me. A lot of films that I definitely really did love. And then there were those select few that really did disappoint me and really could have been a lot more. And some of them were straight up shit. Some of them really affected me in a pretty big way. And that is, of course, what we're going to be doing in this video. We are going to talk about the worst movies of this year, which, guys, I saw a lot of movies this year. So there's definitely, I think this is probably my most accurate worst list yet. This is definitely the most amount of movies I've seen. Since I've started this channel, and I'm definitely very proud of myself for that. But either way, guys, we're just going to dive into it right now. And before I give you my top 10 worst list, I do actually have quite a few honorable mentions because, yes, like I said, admittedly, this was definitely a stronger year than last year. There still were a lot of shitty movies this year. Some that I'm really surprised didn't end up on this list because of how much I truly despise them. But like I said, some of them just didn't make the cuts, and there are a lot here, so in no particular order, I'm just going to go through right now. If there's one that I want to talk about specifically, I will, but I'm just going to go through right now. So in no particular order, in terms of honorable mentions, we do have, starting off with Underworld Blood Wars, Friend Request, Dirty Dancing. Anyone remember that really shitty ABC remake of Dirty Dancing? Yeah, I threw that on here. I count that as a movie for sure. A Bad Mom's Christmas, Geostorm, a movie that no one saw except for me, Hello Again, The Star, and then these two I'm very surprised didn't make my list at all. Chips, and especially Diver Wimpy Kid, The Long Haul, which is like as direct to DVD as you can possibly get when it comes to a franchise like this. I can't believe that this was in fact a theatrical film, but somehow these films are not nearly as bad as my top 10. I can't believe it either. I thought for sure things like The Long Haul and Chips would be on this list, but they actually didn't make it. There are 10 films that are actually way worse than this, and we're just going to count them down right now. So, number 10 right off the bats, I'm going to say right now, this list is comprised of a lot of similar films, and one of the biggest is, comedies. This was honestly one of the worst years for comedies I've ever seen. I think everyone pretty much knows that. And right off the bat, we start off with one of the worst of the bunch, which is absolutely The House. I mean, such a low point in every way possible. Not a lot of people saw this movie, and good for them, because this is easily one of the worst you could possibly see. This film has some really talented individuals, Will Ferrell and Amy Poehler. I should be laughing at these two. I should be enjoying their comedy. But this is probably the worst performance I've ever seen from Will Ferrell. The whole movie, it's just him being an idiot. It's just him not knowing how to do math. I mean, he's just a complete idiot in this movie. Amy Poehler isn't too far behind him. These two are just so nonsensical individuals, and they don't make any sense whatsoever. And the choices that their characters go through here are just so baffling. Does anyone remember that certain scene involving a chainsaw? Yeah, I definitely do as well. I wish I didn't have to remember that scene, but I very much remember that. It involves a finger, and it's probably one of the grossest things I've seen all year. The movie, it was just so messy. There's so many scenes where they kept cutting to a store, so much so that I have a friend, and we constantly refer to this movie as The Store because they're barely in the house in general. It does have good performance from Allison Tolman, and I will admit, the chick from Brigsby Bear was really good in this, but other than that, there's really not much entertainment in the house whatsoever. It's such a vulgar, just very deplorable sort of comedy that really didn't do anything for me. It's very infantile in that way. It has so much gross out humor. It's not funny whatsoever. It has a climax that literally makes no sense. It's a very short movie, but it doesn't feel like that at all. It's probably one of the dullest comedies you could watch it this year. Like I said, I know a lot of people didn't see it, and good for you if you didn't, because definitely stay away from The House, and for all those reasons, it is definitely number 10. Now, number 9, this is a movie that I just recently watched. I did not expect it to be nearly as bad as it was, but it actually did end up on the list, and that is Bright. Now, look, Bright is a horrible movie. Definitely, it's one of the worst movies of the year, but it's mainly because of how badly it was presented. The world building here is just so weak. I didn't really feel much interest in anything that was going on. It felt too much like the regular modern day world. It didn't, and the dialogue as well didn't feel that way. It's got a really bad performance from Will Smith, probably one of the worst I've ever seen from him. He just feels so over the top and not really that great in this movie at all. I was so bored with this movie that I honestly couldn't tell you who all these characters were. I couldn't even tell you who the main threat was in this movie because they're too similar. So many characters here. It's just there's so much dumb dialogue. It's a film that tries to be this edgy film by throwing all these F-bombs in there, and it doesn't really do anything whatsoever. That doesn't strengthen your film. It just makes you look really dumb, and it makes you seem like you can't really find a way to tell a story without just copying off of other things. That's very much what this film does feel like. It's copying off of a lot of other films that we've seen in the past. Bright is just, again, this has been a really bad year for Netflix in general. You're going to see this trend a lot. There are going to be a lot of Netflix films on here, and this is definitely not the last you've heard of them for sure. We're going to come back to Netflix in a little bit, but this is definitely one of the worst films they've done. It's unfortunate because it's probably one of the biggest films they put their budget into, but the fact that this is such a colossal failure really does make me worried for the future of Netflix moving forward, and definitely shows a change needs to be made ASAP for sure. So, number eight. This is a film that is easily one of the most disappointing of the entire year. I really wanted to love it, and it ended up being one of the worst colossal failures I've seen in a while, and that's The Snowman. I mean, what the fuck happened with this movie? This movie had so much potential. I mean, you have Michael Fassbender, Rebecca Ferguson, J.K. Simmons. I mean, just such an incredible cast, and the entire film is just such a mess. What is the plotline in this movie? I have no idea. Who is Harry Hole in this movie? I don't know. What the hell was Val Kilmer doing in this movie as well? I mean, does anyone remember Val Kilmer's completely wordless performance and the awful voiceover they gave him? This whole movie was just, like I said, such a failure in every way possible. It really just made me very infuriated. It very quickly made me so disinterested in the mystery, and director Thomas Alfredson has literally said that he, rushed this movie and that he wasn't able to finish the movie. And again, it just makes me question why he even released this now. Why couldn't he wait? I don't know if there was a mandate or whatever, but it really did show how rushed this movie really was. It really destroyed the entire film. This could have been a very compelling mystery thriller, but any opportunity to flesh out these characters, any opportunity to make a really well done series and maybe give Michael Fassbender his own detective series was completely squandered here. The Snowman is one of the worst thrillers I think I've ever seen. It is definitely nothing I recommend. It's got a couple good performances in there, but other than that, it's just a movie that I think people are going to watch years from now and probably make fun of. A lot of people have said this is the Room level of bad, and I don't know if I'd go that far, but it definitely, Val Kilmer especially, has a lot of scenes like it. There are a lot of unintentionally funny scenes in here. The Snowman was just such a disaster. It could have been so much more, and for all those reasons, it is absolutely number 8. So number 7, we come back to Netflix here with one of the films that, again, I question why they even distributed, and that is You Get Me. I mean, come on, Netflix, what are you doing here? Like, you have so many other things you could do, and yet you finance this film, and it sticks out like a sore thumb. Nothing about You Get Me feels like something Netflix would do. This feels as bottom of the barrel as you could possibly get. It's every revenge thriller you've ever seen. Guy likes girl, girl becomes a guy, doesn't want to be with this girl, so he goes up to this other girl, this girl becomes obsessed with him. Bella Thorne gives probably the worst performance I've ever seen from her. It is honestly laughably bad. I mean, Bella Thorne, I don't know if she really has a future as an actress. This has probably been one of her worst years yet in terms of acting. But I think after this film, definitely, she really needs to rethink her career. I really hope this doesn't happen again. Her character was just so bad. Does anyone remember the main character in this movie? How much of a douchebag he was? How unlikable he was? Yet the film constantly tries to get us to sympathize with him. Just the stakes in this movie are ridiculous. The direction it goes are awful. It has one of the dumbest climaxes I've seen in recent memory. Just everything about You Get Me, I fucking hated. I couldn't stand this movie. I can't believe it's as low as a truly is. I thought this movie would be way higher when I first saw it, but admittedly, there are 6 films that are surprisingly worse than this movie, and that really just speaks volumes about how bad this year was when it comes to really shitty films. So, number 6, similar to 2016, this was definitely a pretty strong year for horror films. I thought we had a lot of great ones for sure, but it didn't start off too good, especially when it comes to The Bye-Bye Man, which, holy shit, this movie, The Bye-Bye Man. I'm sure a lot of people forgot about this movie, which is a good thing because a lot of people didn't see this movie, but I certainly haven't. I have not forgotten how dumb this movie is. I have not forgotten how low effort this movie is. I mean, the whole movie, it's setting in this mythology. It doesn't really make any sense whatsoever. It has some really dumb performances. It's got so many laughable lines, and just from the opening scene, it's dumb. The opening scene, does anyone remember that really dumb opening scene that seemed like something out of like Scary Movie or something like that? Just everything about this movie is so dumb. There's nothing scary about whatsoever, and it genuinely makes me question how it is PG-13. There are so many uses of, the F-bomb here. There's so many uses of, nudity here. I mean, I don't get how this film is PG-13. It doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever how the MPA just let that fly by, but this is easily one of the worst horror films I've seen in this decade for sure. It's, I think, as low effort as you can possibly get. Luckily, nothing reached the lows of this film when it comes to horror for me, but this is really as bad as I think you can possibly get. It was so bad, it took me over a month to review it. That's how much I didn't care about this movie. That's how low of motivation I had to talk about this movie. But luckily, this is the last time I'll talk about this movie ever again. The Bye-Bye Man absolutely sucks. I think it's as bottom of the barrel as you can get when it comes to horror films. It has all the cliches. It's got the really dumb characters, and it's got the girl who's clueless, and it's got a love triangle. I mean, it's got every possible thing you could think of that's really dumb here. Faye Dunaway and Carrie-Anne Moss are in this movie for some reason. I have no idea why. Why are you doing this to your career? You got so many other better things to do here. But The Bye-Bye Man in general is just awful. I hate everything about it. If you can get past the title, it's a really dumb movie. Even the title in general is really dumb, and that is why it is definitely my number 6. Now, number 5 comes from a franchise that I absolutely despise. There is no secret in hiding how much I truly hate these films. I don't know why these films are so adored by many, and what I mean by adored, it's not really adored by, it has its fan base for sure, and the fan base is very strong, and I'm just happy this franchise is coming to an end, and that is 50 Shades Darker. I mean, I genuinely thought that the first movie was awful. I mean, I believe it was like my number 9 of 2015, and this one's even worse, and it's just because of how low effort this film really is. There isn't really a plot line to this movie. There isn't really a consistent story here. It just feels like a bunch of little short stories. I said in my review, it feels like the 50 Shades short story collection, and I still stick by that. There isn't really a overlying sort of story here. It's so messy, it's so unfocused, it doesn't make any sense. It seems like it's just trying to get to the next sex scene. That's very much what this feels like. Jamie Dornan and Dakota Johnson, some of the worst chemistry I have seen in recent memory. Dakota Johnson, I don't know what the fuck you're doing with your career, but please get the hell out of this series. I'm really looking forward to seeing her leave this series so she can hopefully become like Kristen Stewart, where she actually goes to make some really successful stuff, because I genuinely do see a lot of talent in her, as well as Jamie Dornan. I think he definitely has potential as well, but these two are trapped in just this never-ending cycle of shittiness. I don't think there's any way you're ever going to be able to make this series good, and for all I know, 50 Shades Freed could be worse, honestly. I'm just glad this franchise is coming to an end. I really don't want to talk about this series for that much longer. I've said enough about it already, but this, like I said, is as low as you can possibly get. There's really not much entertainment value in this movie, unless I'd say you're like a horny middle-aged woman. There's not really much to like about this movie. 50 Shades Darker is just awful. I hesitate to even call it a movie because it doesn't really have a story structure, and in general, that is why it is definitely my number 5. So now we get to my top 4, guys, and here's where I'm really going to lose my shit. I mean, this top 4 are some of the worst movies I've ever seen, without a doubt. These top 4 is just, I really don't want to see anything like these again. Number 4, like I said, this has been a really off and on year for me with Netflix. Sometimes they make a really great film, and then sometimes they make a really dumb film, and then they make something like The Babysitter and just truly show how little of a fuck they give when it comes to distributing movies. I mean, Netflix will literally pick up anything. If they can pick something like The Babysitter, which is just so nonsensical and so dumb and makes no sense whatsoever, then I'm pretty sure they can pick pretty much anything. The Babysitter was truly awful. I mean, there's really not anything to enjoy about this movie. It's got some talented actors in there. Robbie Amell, some, the main chick in there, I guess, is a talented actress, but there's some Samara Weaving, she's a talented actress, but there's not really much for any of these characters to do. The twist in this movie comes so out of left field, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Where it ends up going from there is just so laughably bad, and it gets so baffling, and it got so confusing as it went on. The climax of this movie is one of the dumbest things I have seen in recent memory. This is a film that could have poked fun itself and could have been something maybe really fun if it actually had good acting and it actually had people who gave a shit, but this movie clearly didn't. It's one of the worst parody films I think I've ever seen. It's clearly trying to make fun of the whole babysitter sort of thing, and there's a film this year that did that much better. It was called Better Watch Out, and this movie just completely dropped the ball on that. Like I said, this really proved to me how low effort Netflix really is. It has some of the dumbest moments I've seen all year. I know this one got a lot of praise, but this movie really just didn't do anything for me. It really just had a huge impact on me. I was not a fan of this movie at all. It left me speechless in a bad way, honestly. I genuinely don't know. I really don't know what Netflix is doing that made them sign on to this movie. There's nothing about this that is entertaining. There's nothing about this that I found profitable. Everything about The Babysitter is complete shit. It is something that I hope none of you ever have to sit through, and that is why it is definitely my number 4. So, number 3, guys, like I said, this was a pretty terrible year for comedies, full of many films that just really annoyed me. However, nothing drove me to the level of bitterness and just utter, just utter sadness than Rough Night did. I mean, Rough Night is as bad as I think any of the comedies this year could possibly get. There's really nothing in this movie. I mean, ScarJo's in this movie, and even she isn't good here, and that's when you know you've really made a horrible film. This film is just comprised of such unlikable characters who are just there to just make jokes about sex, and, Kate McKinnon's there to make fun of Australians, I guess. I mean, this movie is offensive, it's dumb, it's, really makes no sense whatsoever. The fact that these girls go through what they do and the way they do and the twists in this movie makes no sense whatsoever. It's one of the dumbest things I've seen in a while. A lot of people say a lot of these comedies felt like cartoons. This one straight up felt like a cartoon. No one in this movie felt like an actual human being. I hated everything about Rough Night. I couldn't wait for this movie to end, and that is why it is absolutely my number 3. Now, number 2, another big consistency of this year was really unnecessary sequels, but I don't think any sequel was as unnecessary as Boo 2 on Madea Halloween. Yeah, you guys know this was coming. You guys know how much I hate this series, and I know people get on me for it, but I legitimately hate this series. Why? Because there's such little effort put into it. Tyler Perry has literally admitted that he hates this series and that he wants this to stop. He doesn't want to play this character anymore. He doesn't enjoy doing it anymore. So why is he doing it? Clearly for the money. I mean, it's clear that he is not doing this because he wants to. It is not someone who is doing this because he's just doing it with a bunch of friends and he's just goofing off. That is not at all what this series has become. This movie is literally a direct retread of the first movie. In fact, I'm pretty sure they reused scenes from the first movie. This doesn't at all feel like its own thing. There was no reason for this to be made. Madea is incredibly annoying, but that's nothing compared to Hattie, who just half the movie is just Madea. I mean, that is easily one of the worst characters I have seen all year. It's so hard on the ears. It's so hard to get through in general. It's a hour and 40-minute movie, but it feels very much like 3 hours. It is just so hard to get through. Every Madea movie I see, it just feels the same way, and it made me want to stop watching this series for sure. I don't know if this is my last Madea movie. I might watch a Madea family funeral next year, but if they continue to make these films films as low effort and as little entertainment value as this. I mean, I can't even laugh at these movies. There's nothing to make fun of here. There's nothing to say, oh, this is just a so bad it's good film, because it's just so boring and unengaging, and there's really not much to like about these films. There's nothing that happens in it. Most of the movie's just them sitting around, just talking about racist shits, and it's not fun to watch at all. I know the series has its fans, but I know even fans in the Madea series said that this was awful. This is probably the worst Madea movie I've personally ever seen. Boo 2 is as worst as you can possibly get, and that is why it is absolutely my number 2. And surprisingly, though, as bad as Boo 2 really was, and as much as I did hate it, it's nothing compared to my number 1. My number 1, like I said, there's a huge constant factor in this series, and that is very low effort, very little entertainment value. That is a big part of what this top 10 is comprised of. There's a lot of films in here that are just very dumb in that way and don't really seem to cater to anyone. But I don't think any film felt as little effort as my number 1 did. My number 1's a movie that I don't even know how it was made. I don't know how this got through to anyone. How the fuck are we living in a world where there actually is an Emoji Movie? I mean, seriously, how did this actually happen? I genuinely question how we actually got to this point where there wasn't a movie called the Emoji Movie and everyone thought it was going to be so successful and that people were going to enjoy it. It's a movie that I couldn't even review. That's how bad this movie really was. That's how little effort is put into this movie. Characters? What? There are no characters in this movie. This movie doesn't have characters. It's just a bunch of commercials. It's just a bunch of ads, basically. That's what this entire movie is. It's just showing you how great the iPhone really is. It's showing you how great emojis are. How emojis apparently are going to change the world forever, and emojis are just going to do such amazing things, aren't they? And it's comprised of such amazing characters like Meh, and and of course, who can forget Patrick Stewart's iconic poop character? The parents are great in this movie, not annoying at all. Smiley's one of the best villains out there. I mean, there are just so many things in this movie that are fantastic. I hated everything. I'm sorry, guys. I can't even do it. I hated everything about the Emoji Movie. The parents in this movie are just awful to watch. Honestly, it's so boring. There's really nothing that happens in this movie. I don't even think kids will really enjoy this movie. I know most kids avoided this movie. I know it did really well, but that's mainly because most people watched it for meme purposes, and it very much deserves all of the memes it got. I think even memes, though it is a disgrace to memes, there's not really anything in this movie. Again, I can't believe this was actually got passed. I can't believe this movie actually happened. It's full of talented people, but talented people who very much feel like they were forced to do this. No one really seems like they wanted to do this movie. No one really seemed passionate about it at all. There's nothing here that really says to me the Emoji Movie was something that needed to be made. Again, I struggle how this even got made. I can't believe we're actually living in a world where there is an Emoji Movie. It's as bottom of the barrel as you can possibly get. It's a film that I truly hope that none of you ever have the misfortune of watching. Even if you're curious, don't watch the Emoji Movie. Seriously, you have so many other things to do with your life. It's a film that is 83 minutes, but it honestly feels like 4 hours. It really does. It is so dumb. It makes no sense whatsoever. It barely has a story. It's just copying off the success of other films like the Lego Movie and Wreck-It Ralph, except it doesn't have that wit and that charm that those films really did have. It's trying to be this thought-provoking film when in reality it's just really dumb and it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. I don't know how this movie was actually made. I hope we never have to see these characters again. I really genuinely hope that this is all we're gonna get in terms of this series. Knowing Sony, though, I would not put it past them, honestly. Sony, this proves that Sony Pictures Animation is easily the worst animated studio working today. They made 2 of the worst anime movies of the year, but I don't think anything compared to the level of the Emoji Movie. I don't think they're going to hit a low that is something that is worse than this. I just don't actually see that happening for them. The Emoji Movie, like I said, it's just as bad as animated movies can truly get. This was particularly not a very strong year for animation. This was easily the worst I've ever seen, and for for all of those reasons. It's a film that infuriated me. It really upset me. It made me very tired. It made me feel physically ill at points. It just really made me worried for the future of Hollywood in general. The fact that movies like this are getting made, I can't believe this is actually happening. We're living in a world where there is an Emoji Movie, and for all of those reasons that I just said, it is absolutely my number one. And that's it, guys. Those are my top 10 worst movies of the year. I honestly had a lot of fun doing this video. I always love ripping these movies to shreds. It's always very fun to see. If you like these movies, that's completely fine. You know, I always say, you know, it's your opinion, and that definitely you should stick by it. It's more power to you if you do like them. But these movies, like I said, I just couldn't stand any of them. If you haven't seen this movie, please don't check out any of them, especially the Emoji Movie. Just stay the fuck away from that as far as you can possibly get. Either way, guys, that's it for my top 10 worst list. Look forward to Wednesday when I will be putting up my best list. I do have definitely a few more films I want to watch before I can do that, but I at least want to get the worst list out of the way. But that's this video, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you guys thought of this video overall. Loved your thoughts. And again, let me know what your worst list is. Loved your thoughts on all of that. But that's this video. Hope you guys enjoyed. See you guys in my next video, and I will definitely see you guys for that. Okay, bye.